There's a number sitting in your future right now. You can't see it. You haven't earned it yet. You haven't done anything to create it, but it exists. And depending on one decision you make in the next few years, probably the next few months, that number is either going to be life-changing or it's going to be embarrassingly small. The decision isn't which stocks to pick. It isn't which crypto to buy. It isn't finding some angle nobody else knows about. It's just when do you start? That's it. That's the whole thing. Because of a mathematical phenomenon called compound interest, the single most powerful force in personal finance. The gap between starting at 22 and starting at 32 isn't 10 years of savings. It's potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes more. And most people find this out too late. Let's make sure you're not one of them. Marcus is 22, just started his first real job, making decent money. Not amazing, but decent. He's heard the words compound interest before. His dad mentioned it once. His high school economics teacher mentioned it. He nodded both times and moved on. Marcus is currently spending most of his paycheck on rent, his car, food, and a streaming situation that has genuinely gotten out of hand. Marcus is fine. Marcus is also quietly making the most expensive mistake of his life by doing absolutely nothing. We'll come back to Marcus constantly. Before compound interest makes sense, you need to understand what it's replacing. Simple interest is straightforward. You have money. Someone pays you a percentage of that money each year for using it. Same percentage, same base amount every single year. You put $1,000 somewhere. It pays 10% simple interest per year. Year 1, $100 in interest. Total, $1,100. Year 2, another $100. Total, $1,200. Year 3, another $100. Total, $1,300. Clean, predictable, linear. Every year looks exactly like the last. The problem? That's not how most investment growth works. And that's not how debt works either, which we'll get to. Simple interest is math you did in 6th grade. Compound interest is a different animal entirely. Here's the concept in one sentence. Compound interest means you earn interest on your interest. That's it. That's the whole magic. But the implications of that one sentence played out over decades are genuinely hard to believe until you see the numbers. Back to that $1,000. Now with 10% compound interest per year. Year 1, 10% of $1,000 equals $100. New total, $1,100. Year 2, 10% of $1,100 equals $110. New total, $1,210. Year 3, 10% of $1,210 equals $121. New total, $1,331. You're earning more dollars each year without adding anything. The interest from year 1 is now generating its own interest. The interest from year 2 is generating its own interest. Your money is making money that makes money. The growth is no longer linear. It's a curve. And over time, that curve gets steep. This is the part most people don't actually sit with long enough. Compound growth is slow at first, maddeningly slow. In the early years, it barely looks like anything is happening. You check your account, it's up a little, you feel nothing. That's because compounding is backloaded. Most of the growth happens in the later years, not the early ones. Here's Marcus putting $5,000 into an investment account at 22, assuming an average annual return of 8%, and never adding another dollar. Just leaving it. Age 22, $5,000. Age 30, roughly $9,250. Age 40, roughly $19,950. Age 50, roughly $43,100. Age 60, roughly $93,000. He put in $5,000. At 60, it's worth nearly $93,000 from a single deposit with no extra contributions. The last decade alone, from 50 to 60, added almost $50,000, more than the previous 3 decades combined. That's what the backloading looks like. That's the curve getting steep. You've probably noticed the 8% figure and wondered where it comes from. Fair question. Let's be straight about it. The U.S. stock market, specifically broad index funds tracking the S&P 500, has historically returned roughly 10% annually on average before inflation, and closer to 7% to 8% after adjusting for inflation over long time periods. That's a historical average, not a guarantee. Markets go up and down. Some decades are great, some are rough. Any individual year could be very different from the average. But over long time horizons, 30, 40 years, The historical data is consistent enough that financial planners commonly use 7% to 8% as a planning assumption for diversified, long-term investing. We're using 8% for Marcus. It's not a promise. It's a reasonable long-run estimate based on history. Understood? Good. Moving on. Here's a shortcut worth having in your brain forever. The rule of 72. Divide 72 by your annual return rate, and you get approximately how many years it takes your money to double. At 8% returns, 72 divided by 8 equals 9 years to double. At 6%, 72 divided by 6 equals 12 years to double. At 4%, 72 divided by 4 equals 18 years to double. This is an approximation, not a precise calculation, but it's accurate enough to be genuinely useful. So for Marcus, at 8%, his money doubles roughly every 9 years. $5,000 at 22 to $10,000 at 31 to $20,000 at 40 to $40,000 at 49 to $80,000 at 58. 4 doublings. That's it. That's almost $80,000 from $5,000 and patience. The rule of 72 makes compound growth feel real in a way that abstract projections don't. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. This is the number most people never actually calculate. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Scenario A. Marcus starts at 22. He invests $200 a month from age 22 to 32. 10 years, then stops completely. Never adds another dollar. Lets it sit until 62. Total amount Marcus actually invested, $24,000. Scenario B. Marcus's friend Derek starts at 32. Derek invests $200 a month from age 32 all the way to age 62. 30 years straight. 3 times longer. Disciplined the entire time. Total amount Derek actually invested, $72,000. Assuming 8% average annual returns. Who ends up with more at 62? Marcus. Approximately $349,000. Derek. Approximately $298,000. Marcus invested for 10 years. Derek invested for 30 years. Derek put in 3 times as much money. Marcus wins by roughly $50,000. Let that land for a second. Marcus won by starting earlier. Not by investing more. Not by picking better investments. Not by being smarter. Just by starting a decade sooner. That 10-year head start was worth more than 20 additional years of consistent investing. This is the most important math in personal finance. And it's the math that makes waiting feel genuinely expensive. Let's make this specific to where Marcus is right now. Marcus is 22. He's earning money. He is currently not investing any of it in a meaningful way. Every month he waits costs him something. Not just the $200 he could be investing. It costs him the compound growth that $200 would have generated over the next 40 years. 1 month of delay at age 22 costs more than 1 month of delay at age 32. Because the younger investment has more years to compound. This is called opportunity cost. What you give up by choosing one option over another. Every day Marcus spends not investing is a day of compounding he can never get back. He doesn't need to invest a lot. He needs to invest something, now, and let time do the majority of the work. The best investing decision Marcus will ever make isn't about which asset to pick. It's the decision to start before he feels fully ready. Let's connect this to something Marcus probably has access to right now and is ignoring. A 401k is a retirement account offered through many employers. You contribute money from your paycheck before it gets taxed. It grows inside the account without being taxed annually, and you pay taxes when you withdraw in retirement. 2 massive advantages. First, tax-deferred growth. Because you're not paying taxes on the gains every year, more money stays in the account to compound. More base means more growth. The effect compounds on top of the compounding. Second, employer matching. Many employers will match a percentage of what you contribute, commonly 50% up to a certain amount, sometimes dollar for dollar. The specifics vary by employer, so check yours. If your employer matches and you're not contributing enough to get the full match, you are leaving money on the table. That is the closest thing to free money that exists in the financial system. It's part of your compensation that you're voluntarily declining. Marcus's employer matches 50% on contributions up to 6% of his salary. Marcus is contributing 0%. Marcus is turning down a meaningful portion of his total compensation every single paycheck. This is the financial equivalent of your boss offering you a raise and you saying, "No thanks, I'm good." Important moment, pay attention. Everything we just said about compound interest working for you when you're investing, it works exactly the same way against you when you're in debt. Credit card APR. The annual interest rate is typically somewhere in the range of 20% to 30% for many cards. At those rates, the rule of 72 says your debt doubles in roughly 2.5 to 3.5 years if you're only making minimum payments. You charged $1,500 to a card during a rough month. You pay minimums. You're busy. You'll deal with it later. 3 years later, if you've been paying minimums, that balance has barely moved. And in a high APR scenario, it could be approaching double what you started with. Compound interest on debt is compound interest running in reverse, against you, for someone else's benefit. The credit card company is Marcus. You're playing the role of the account that just sits there growing. This is why high-interest debt is the priority before investing, because you cannot out-invest a 25% APR. The math doesn't work in your direction. Pay off high-interest debt first, then let compounding run for you instead of against you. One more layer. This one matters. Compounding doesn't always happen once a year. It can happen monthly, daily, or continuously depending on the account. The more frequently interest compounds, the faster it grows. $10,000 at 8% annual interest, compounded yearly. $10,800 after year 1, compounded monthly, about $10,830 after year 1. That difference looks tiny for 1 year. Over 30 years, it's meaningful. Most investment accounts and retirement funds compound monthly. Most savings accounts compound monthly or daily. Credit cards compound daily. Of course they do. The frequency works in whoever is charging the interest's favor, which is another reason to get to the side of the table where you're receiving it. Here's the thing people get wrong about this. They hear the compound interest argument, they understand it, they agree with it, and then they think, I need to invest a real amount of money or it doesn't count. And they wait until they have a real amount of money and they never start. That is the wrong takeaway. Starting small is not just okay. In many ways, it's better than starting later with more, because time is the variable that matters most. $50 a month invested at 22 is more powerful than $200 a month invested at 32. Not because $50 is a lot of money. It's not. It's because the years from 22 to 32 are the most valuable years your money can have. The math is unambiguous about this. Marcus doesn't need to solve his entire financial life before he opens an account. He needs to start. Whatever amount he can. Today, not next month. The amount will grow as his income grows. The time will not come back. Okay, but where do I actually put it? Fair. Here's the practical layer. Most people in their 20s with access to an employer 401k should start there, specifically up to the employer match at minimum. That's the first move. If your employer doesn't offer a match, or once you've hit the match, a Roth IRA is often the next stop. A Roth IRA lets you invest after-tax money that then grows tax-free, and you pay no taxes on withdrawals in retirement. The contribution limit changes periodically. Look up the current year's limit. It's usually a few $1,000s annually. Inside these accounts, you're choosing what to invest in. For most people starting out, the simple answer is a broad index fund. A fund that tracks a wide basket of stocks like the S&P 500. Diversified, low fees, historically solid long-run returns. Not individual stocks, not crypto as your core holding, not anything your cousin told you about. An index fund in a tax-advantaged account started as early as possible. That's the whole move for most people. Marcus could set this up in 20 minutes tonight. He won't, but he could. Let's run Marcus 2 ways. Marcus does nothing until 32. At 32, he finally gets serious. Invests $300 a month for the next 30 years until 62. Total invested, $108,000. Estimated balance at 62 at 8% returns, roughly $408,000. Marcus starts at 22. He invests $150 a month, half as much, for 40 years until 62. Total invested, $72,000. Estimated balance at 62 at 8% returns, roughly $526,000. Marcus invested $36,000 less. He ends up with over $100,000 more because he started 10 years earlier at half the monthly amount. Time beat money. Again, the Marcus who starts at 22 doesn't have more discipline. He doesn't have a higher income. He doesn't know more about investing. He just started. That's the only variable that changed. That's the whole lesson. All right, everything. Simple interest pays you the same amount every year on your original deposit. Compound interest pays you on your interest too. The pile keeps growing itself. The growth is backloaded. The last decade produces more than the first 3 combined. Historical long-term stock market returns have averaged roughly 7 to 8% annually after inflation. Not guaranteed, but the best long-run historical benchmark we have. Rule of 72. Divide 72 by your return rate to find out how many years your money takes to double. Starting at 22 versus 32 can produce a six-figure difference even if the later starter invests 3 times as much. Every month of delay has a real, calculable cost. A 401k with employer matching is part of your compensation. Not contributing is voluntarily declining a raise. Compound interest on debt works against you just as hard. High-interest debt must go first. More frequent compounding equals faster growth, and credit cards compound daily on purpose. Starting small early beats starting big late. Always. You don't need to figure out everything before you start. You need to start. The account setup takes 20 minutes. The time it buys you is irreplaceable. Marcus is still thinking about it. Don't be Marcus. The most powerful thing compound interest does is this. It rewards you for starting before you're ready, before you have a lot, before you fully understand everything. You don't need to optimize. You don't need to time the market. You don't need a finance degree or a perfect budget or 6 months of research. You need an account, a small automatic contribution, and enough patience to leave it alone. The math does the rest. The only thing that makes compound interest not work for you is waiting. So stop waiting. If you just did the math on what you've cost yourself by waiting, welcome to the club. Most people get this feeling around age 28 and spend a week being annoyed about it. Totally normal. Hit subscribe because the next video is about index funds, what they actually are, why they beat most professional investors over time, and how to set one up without accidentally making it complicated. And drop a comment. How old are you and have you started yet? No judgment. Genuinely curious where people are at. The answers are always interesting. See you there.